Colossus is the most advanced lineup optimizer in daily fantasy sports. Lock and exclude players. Adjust player exposure to reduce risk of injury or poor performance. Customize individual projections or upload your own projections. Generate hundreds of optimal lineups in seconds. Name and save the best lineups. Create winning lineups for the top sites like DraftKings and FanDuel for free at dailyfantasycafe.com.
Hello and welcome to the Analysis of Winning Lineups podcast. I'm Big Italy 42, and I'm breaking down some of the top two winning lineups. One on FanDuel, one on DraftKings. One took home $1 million, one took home 1.2, and as was the theme last week, we're seeing more new players, or I guess we could say less experienced players that are taking it down. The winner of the FanDuel $1 million first prize was Cookies 248. Had a grand total of 28 wins across all sports, but joined in 2009. So August of 2009, 6 years later, 28th win, just still happens to be worth $1 million. So congratulations, and some monster scores this week. Obviously, if you played at all, even if you just watched the games, you're interested. There were a lot of high scores, as you'll see here, and quite a few 3-touchdown players, and at least 2 on each of these lineups. So we'll go ahead and get to those. Starting off with the quarterback, Cam Newton, 29.9 points on FanDuel, 7.9K, 8.6% owned. Not super low ownership, but not a particularly popular play. He was a guy that a lot of people had in cash games, and absolutely gashed the New Orleans Saints. This is a bad defense right now. As we know, Newton, a dual threat quarterback that has a nice high floor, also has upside, but is a guy that you need to have those big passing games or get a rushing touchdown to have a huge game. And he did both those things this week. Ended up with 3 total scores, 348 total yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. And, he absolutely loaded up almost 30 points at the quarterback position. Huge this week. Moving on here to running backs, and both these guys had huge games. First one, Joseph Randle, $6,500, 5.2% owned against Atlanta. 2 touchdowns in the first 8 minutes of the game here. Put in a third one before the end of the first half. Didn't do a whole lot in the second half. Cowboys offense itself didn't do a whole lot in the second half. But as you look at this one, though, Joseph Randle paid off early. Didn't need a whole lot late. 29.5 points with those 3 touchdowns. Do you get 3 touchdowns for your running back? Probably not going to be too upset if he has a disappointing second half, especially when you still end up winning $1 million. So nice job there. Next up, Devonta Freeman. One of these guys who's been frustrating for DFS players over the past few years. We saw him last year with ample opportunity to, grab a stranglehold and become the featured back in this offense, but really struggled. It's a guy that was pretty terrible in his first 2 games this season. 43 yards on 22 carries first 2 weeks. Obviously, Tevin Coleman was the guy. Then Tevin Coleman broke his rib. Obviously, this was he's a change of pace back. He's a third down type back, receiving back. But he had a monster game and ended up with 30 rushes, 3 touchdowns, 52 receiving yards on top of his huge over 140 yards rushing. So nearly 200 total yards, 3 touchdowns, 39.8 points, highest scoring player on this roster. And only one guy really even close. So huge game for Devonta Freeman at 6,500, 6.7% there. DeAndre Hopkins, for the second time in 3 weeks, he's on the $1 million winning roster on FanDuel and came in at 7.8K, 5.5%. And this is the first time that the winning lineup on FanDuel didn't have either Antonio Brown or Julio Jones. So this was literally the perfect combination of wide receivers at their price tags. And Hopkins had a good game, not a phenomenal game, 20.1 points, but 8 for 101 and a touchdown over Tampa Bay. More than enough to pay off his tag there at 20.1 points. He did end up actually outscoring Antonio Brown. Obviously, somewhat of that related to the fact that Ben Roethlisberger got hurt. But either way, moving on next, Keenan Allen was a huge key here. $7,600, 1.6% owned, 12 touchdowns, 133 yards, and 2 touchdowns on an otherwise terrible game for San Diego. Philip Rivers ended up with decent numbers overall, but this game was not really close past halftime. And really no one else got involved. Darius Green obviously was out. Melvin Gordon didn't do a whole lot either. Vikings defense showed up. And, this was his second touchdown came really late in the game as well. So Keenan Allen, as we know, guy with a very low floor but a very high ceiling, volume pass catcher. Great call there. He ended up with 31.3 points. And then The key here, Steve Smith Sr., Bengal killer himself, $7,100. He had 186 yards receiving, 13 catches, 2 touchdowns. But the crazy thing is, in the first half, he had 22 yards. So he had almost all of his production in the second half. It was he and A.J. Green going back and forth, huge play after huge play, and what ended up being a shootout in Baltimore. So Steve Smith, monster performance, ended up paying off in a huge way, 37.1 points, enormous performance. Then Greg Olsen, if you won big money this week, or if you did very well in your cash games, likely was because you had Greg Olsen, who was by far the top tight end this week. And at $5,900, he wasn't expensive either. And as I put it here in the article, he did his best Rob Gronkowski impression. 8 for 132 and 2 touchdowns. And he was paired, obviously, with Cam Newton here. So those touchdowns were worth double. So, well, not quite double, but either way, each touchdown pass that Cam Newton threw just happened to go to Greg Olsen. So perfect combination there by Cookies 248. The total number of touchdowns, and this is not including the defense touchdown, who we're going to get to here in a minute. Well, special teams touchdown. 16 touchdowns from all these skill players. So that's an absolutely astronomical number. You don't expect that number to happen very often, but well done. I mean, nailing all the top plays. Stephen Gostkowski, a kicker, was the chalk play. Like it, love it, hate it, doesn't matter. Gostkowski was the play because it's the highest team total. It made a lot of sense. You knew New England would put up some points. Maybe you didn't expect 17 out of the kicker, but he definitely paid that off. And then last up, Seattle. It was Jimmy Clausen and the Bears. I mean, if you want to even call them an NFL team at this point, it was brutal. I mean, they didn't even come close to the red zone. They didn't come close to scoring. And Seattle's defense, though, as a whole, pretty disappointing outside of the Tyler Lockett kick return touchdown. So that definitely paid off. So if you want to count that, that'd be 17, which is absolutely insane. So congratulations to Cookies 248. If you happen to be Cookies 248 or happen to know them or know a friend who knows them, I'd love to have them on and talk about their thought process in this winning lineup because, I mean, I love this lineup. It's one of those ones where each of these guys was a guy that most people who played a lot of volume, a lot of lineups had some exposure to, but maybe not a lot. And I'd love to hear the thought process behind making this one. So next up was Hoothead, $1.2 million winner on DraftKings. Same situation there. If you know this person or you are this person, love to have you on as well. Cam Newton, no surprise at quarterback here, 32.9 points. Got the bonus from DraftKings from a 300-yard passing. Got the 1 rushing touchdown, 2 passing touchdowns, of course. Devontae Freeman at running back and Joseph Randle, same guys, but Devontae Freeman with the bonus. Obviously, he had 5 catches, which is huge in the full point PPR. That's an extra 2.5 for you there on DraftKings. Got the 100, keep saying 100, the point bonus for 100 rush yards as well there. So 45.3, ridiculously high score there for Devontae Freeman. Joseph Randle, once again here, 7.7%, 3 touchdowns. 105 total yards, but 87 rushing, so didn't quite get the bonus. Then a guy who was on the winning lineup last week, actually both of them, Larry Fitzgerald. That last touchdown, a 33-point game. You've got Carson Palmer and Larry Fitzgerald hooking up still for a late touchdown. So congratulations. That was a huge one. That's what really set him over the top. Definitely would not have been a winning $1 million lineup without that. So Carson Palmer pulling his best Tom Brady impression there and running up the score there at the end. But obviously, we know at least one person in the world very, very happy about that, and congratulations there. Julio Jones had a monster second half. 12 catches for $164 and 2 touchdowns. Obviously got the bonus there with ease. 43.4, only 12% owned this week, so that was a big key there. You get a guy like Julio Jones at that. For him, that's very low ownership. For most players, it's not. But either way, and then most popular non-defensive player on this roster, no surprise, Brandon Marshall at 29.7%. He was facing off against that terrible Philly secondary, and this was a guy that was very popular, struggled early, had that pitch, lateral, whatever the hell it was. I mean, one of the worst plays I've ever seen in any sport. He even said he thought it was the worst play in NFL history. But he redeemed himself, came back, caught a touchdown, ended up with over 100 yards on 10 catches, 28.9 points. Certainly paid off. So that was the chalk play in this lineup. Of course, Greg Olsen, you needed him to win big money, and Hoothead certainly did that with 36.4, 100-yard bonus there as well. And then the last one up, another 3-touchdown player, the only other one that existed this week, actually, and that was LeGarrette Blount. I love this call here. He was a guy I mixed in, obviously not as well as Hoothead did, but he was a guy that, I mean, it was a perfect game script for a guy like LeGarrette Blount. We've seen this before, Bill Belichick. You get up big, and you just hand it off to your workhorse back there. And, I mean, this is one of the hardest guys to take down out of the backfield in all of football. So 3 touchdowns there. ended up with 92 total yards. I mean, even had one reception for 14 yards, and he's not much of a pass-catching back either. And then last up, Seattle Seahawks defense. No surprise here, 30.7% owned. Obviously, the higher ownership due to the fact that they weren't much more expensive than any other defense, unlike on FanDuel where they were a decent amount more than some other defensive options there. So congratulations once again, Cookies 248, Hoothead combining for $2.2 million here. So once again, if you happen to know either of these people, I'd love to have them on my show. And like I said, I don't want to say he or she. Nobody knows. But either way, what we can say is huge winners. So maybe the next one will be you. Maybe it'll be me. Maybe it will be another person making their first opportunity. But either way, fun breaking down these lineups at the end of each week. Obviously, you want to get yourself an idea of the roster construction, ownership levels, things like that. All these things are very vital to success in DFS, and you don't have to have all low-owned players, as you see here. Some popular players, especially on the DraftKings lineup. And so definitely take some tips from this. If you got any questions, we'll be more than willing to help you out. We are at DF Cafe. I'm at Big Italy 42. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. We got lots of great content for every other sport to help you win at dailyfantasycafe.com.